This is Zach Evanish, and you are listening to Airey Brothers Radio.
Jack, I know you mentioned you listen, but you know how you said like you got into coaching kind of because you wanted to help people like not miss some of the things that you might have missed out on. That's why Jimmy and I got into coaching, but that's also why we do this, have conversations with coaches and stuff. Like we feel like there's so many different schools and universities and thoughts out there that we just guidance counselors didn't know about or talk about or tell us
Right.
about. And so, yeah, when we have coaches or strength people, fitness people, we're just trying to present a conversation with guests that we wish someone would have, given to us when we were 15, 16,
Me too.
to help us be
Yes.
better athletes, you know?
Me too. What's interesting is we would hope more athletes are listening to this, but as I always say, like when I was young, I'm like I was dumb and I wasn't the most coachable and I didn't
Right.
listen. And you don't get that window of opportunity unless, Back to the Future is brought to life one day. But those who are mature enough can grasp a coach who's trying to get them to bypass all of our mistakes. And that's hard. Now it's like my desk is covered with a lot of communication books, less training books. Never did I think I'd be reading all these leadership and communication books to the extent that I was. I never thought I would.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I was somewhat coachable, but I also think like I'm trying to be that guy that I wish I had,
Me
in
too.
terms of that. And maybe had I had that guy, I might have been even more coachable or not pushed back on some of the archaic things that we did in the early 90s in wrestling practice or cross country practice, you know?
Yep.
So, um, but anyway, let's get into it. We're live, folks. We're back. It's Tuesday night, and we are really excited for this one. We got a showstopper tonight. He's bringing the heat. I had to take my shirt off because I got so excited before we even started. We have Zach Evanish with us. He's the owner and founder of the world famous Underground Strength Gym. Starting from his parents' garage in 2002, Zach built one of the first warehouse gyms in Edison, New Jersey, and is now located in Manasquan, New Jersey. He has served as the strength and conditioning coach for Rutgers University and Lehigh University wrestling teams. He hosts a Strong Life podcast. He's also an author. Zach has mentored over 1,000 coaches worldwide, including Jimmy and myself. We are excited to have you, Zach. Welcome to Airey Bros Radio. Thank you for your time and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, pumped to reconnect with you guys. It's been way too long. I can't remember who I asked, but it was on my mind like several years ago. I was like, man, where's Richie and Jimmy? I didn't even know where you guys went. I love the ability to disappear. Impressive.
We
Yeah,
have
we're
a
good at
knack
that.
for it. Zach, let everyone know where they can find you.
Z Evanesh on all socials, whether it's YouTube, X, Instagram. Yeah. And I think if you Google Underground Strength Coach or Underground Strength Gym, you'll get directed to YouTube and Instagram and really be able to, man, I've got thousands of things for free out there that people could dig in. If you have a question on training wrestlers, type that in on my blog. You got a question on business, type business into my blog and you can go down the rabbit hole.
All right. Yeah, that's how I found you. Found you on YouTube. I want to say 2008. I don't know if it was that early, but I'm pretty sure it was like 2008 because we were training in a buddy's backyard and his dad was pulling a lot from what you were doing with Charlie Frankel and James Bashada. And I
Yes.
was always watching that stuff. And then once I got into coaching, I saw the all the clinics you were doing, all the search you were doing, and that's kind of where I got my start. And man, Zach, I would say it's been a while, but I still use a lot of that. A lot of that stuff is my core, and a lot of the stuff that I always go back to. I think I went away from it. I went into the CrossFit, tried doing all the exercises, getting flashy, but at the end of the day, always go back to the roots. Always go back to hey, get a sandbag, get a trap bar deadlift, get a prowler. It ain't too hard to get strong. So those were
Yes.
always kind of the cores, and some of those philosophies. We'll talk about that today, but some of that stuff is kind of rooted in what Rich and I do. And recently we had Jim Beebe on at one
Oh
point.
yeah,
You
yeah.
were on his podcast,
He's in
and
Indiana.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you
Sharp guy.
came up, and then we also had Dan John on, and you were someone who hit me to Dan John back
I
in the
love
day.
Dan John. I still use, a lot of people forget Dan John was a high school strength coach. And I'm a high school strength coach at a high school I think I'm like 5 years in. So I guess going on my 6th year. I still use a lot of stuff that he was sharing. It may have been Dragon Door Forum or CrossFit Forum. That's 2002-ish information.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff Rich uses with his kids. He's a phys ed teacher. He uses that.
Yes.
And then we had Coach Ethan Reeve on, and you are the person
Yes.
who introduced me to him, or who he was, who his work was. And I said to Rich, I said, we just need to get Zach on. Like, Zach just keeps on coming up.
Well,
We
I
need to have
stole
Zach on.
everything from those guys. And it's interesting, guys. A lot of coaches do, like, God forbid they mention a name and give credit. It's like, Coach Reeve used to share every workout he did with Wake Forest football on the old Dragon Door forum. And to me, it was so different than what I was seeing that, like, I was like kind of blown away by it. And then he would share just kind of his random thoughts, and it was free. The forums back then were so powerful. We didn't have texting on phones back then. So Coach Reeve would post on the Dragon Door forum. I believe Dan John was more of the CrossFit forum, but I could be wrong. Maybe it was Dragon Door. I believe it was CrossFit. And then, Dan John, I remember how we did the overhead, all the different carries? That was Dan John's warm up. Then Dan John said he had like a lane down the weight room and they did cartwheels and tumbling. And so I was doing that because of Mr. Gonzalez at Kane College, now Kane University. Rick Gonzalez was a 2-time All-American at Kane, but he was my gymnastics instructor in 95. It was the fall semester of 95. And so a wrestler teaching us cartwheels, back extension, and then when Dan John said, I was like, we're going to start doing more of that. And sometimes we forget, like what you said, Jimmy, like you're like, had to get back to deadlifts and sandbags and sleds. We just got sandbags from GoRuck, and we're going to test them out. They look pretty friggin' heavy duty, but we don't even use sandbags anymore. We use all the D balls. And I'm like, we just got too pretty. And we got to get back to doing like some rugged stuff. I feel like it's needed today more than ever, more than it was even needed back then.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Zach, that the kids today, they see all these different things on TikToks, Instagrams, all these different things. Like, can I do this? I'm like, well, we should probably work on figuring out how to walk and chew gum before we are doing an overhead squat on a Bosu ball. Like, let's stick to the simple things. It's simple, but it's not easy. So like when we can do these things, X, Y, and Z, then we can maybe progress. But like you said, it's push, pull, squat, hinge, carry.
I
Can't go
tried
wrong.
I tried to also like get them to understand what we're doing and levels of it. So today, had a kid just being like, I could squat. And it's like, well, I have a rule at the high school. I'm training 40 to 80 kids at a time. If you're going to put a bar on your back, you got to goblet squat 75 pounds for 3 sets of 10. Down, low, perfect technique. And Jim Wendler got me turned on to that. He has a much higher standard. It was something like 100 pounds for 20 reps. And I think, I could be wrong, but I could have sworn he told me you had to do it for 50 reps. I was like, 50 reps? He's like, dude, they go for blood. He's like, they're holding it here, then it's on their shoulder, then it's on their back. He's like, but it's like this gut busting effort of commitment to being able to squat. But I explain it to kids. I say, all right, if you could do this for 3x10 with 75 pounds, your trunk, your shoulders, your back are strong enough to hold it. But then I also tell them, let's say I'm talking to wrestlers. I go, what move, how did Jordan Burroughs win an Olympic gold? Somebody tell me here. Say a double leg takedown. Okay, do you shoot double leg takedowns? Oh, you do. But he also does it. but he obviously does it a lot differently than you because he's winning an Olympic gold with it. Not this Olympic, but the previous one. Gable Stevenson won Olympics with a go behind. You guys know we learned that on day one in kindergarten. Guy shoots, you sprawl, and you snap and spin. David Taylor hit a double. So our two guys that won the gold in the previous Olympic cycle did it on the moves that you learn on day one, right? Go behind and a double. So I try to tell them, I drive a car, but I don't race NASCAR. I'm doing the same thing. So we got to get it better. But, you know, Richie, a lot of people say we've changed. The adults have changed. The parents have changed. True. But I also tell athletes, listen, I never saw so many kids argue with coaches, to be honest with you. Like, why are you arguing with me when I'm telling you how to do it better? And so there's a lot of changes that have happened in the coaching sphere, in the training sphere. We give them a lot more leeway than kind of our generation. And Jimmy, you graduated in the late 90s or when did you graduate high school?
2005.
Okay, early 2000s. So if you grew up in the 80s and 90s, coach said XYZ, that's it, end of story, period. Now, hey, I've given you A, but you could also do B. Hey, coach, today, can I Zercher squat instead of back squat? Yes, absolutely. Just follow the rep scheme. You know, there's options. But when a kid has to argue, it's like, bro, how am I going to help you if you cannot listen? You know, I can't get you anywhere. And so that's why I'm reading books on this kind of communication. But sometimes it's almost like training. You start like veering so far down the like, hey, buddy, how's everything going at home? Where it's like, yo, you need to shut up and you actually need to do what I'm telling you to do. And if, you know, when you start winning, you know, a state title and you're completely undefeated and you could be an All-American in college, then I'll start listening to you on how you need to train. But right now, like, you're not strong enough. So you actually just need to, instead of arguing with me for 5 minutes, you could have done 3 sets of squats in that time. So I'm still going through this evolution with like, how do you coach everybody differently to get them to their potential? And I think looking back at my own training, like my coaches were like, bang, this is how it's done. End of story. It probably would have helped me if somebody would have said, hey, Zach, you know, with your low single, you're getting in great, but you don't finish great. So we need to go over finishes with you. Nobody really did that for me. So I take that experience with modern day and try to blend explaining, giving them opportunity to experiment and having some rigidity, you know, kind of like, I guess, a third, 33% of everything. And, but I will say this, Jimmy, you mentioned like Jim Bisciotti, Charlie Frankel. We haven't had successful wrestlers like that at the underground since the early days, back when I was quote unquote not as smart, you know, doing training that wasn't as intelligent or perfect. But back then we had many all-state wrestlers. We would often have multiple state champs training at the gym who didn't start as state champs. They started in middle school, climbing rope, walking on their hands, and pulling sleds. And we were part of the process versus, you know, Anthony Astronaut trained in high school kind of on and off. He'd win a state title whether we trained him or not, right? But I look back to it, we trained much harder back then, and those kids didn't have so many coaches. They went to one wrestling club, and they had underground for strength and conditioning. Today, we got kids going to 2 clubs, lots of privates. They'll train with us. Then they got to go to this guy. I'm doing speed. Bro, we're doing speed here. Nope, I got to go to here or there. And I think what we're seeing today, and I wonder if you guys, if it's the same down south, because South Carolina is ahead of the curve with strength and conditioning in the schools. They do it as part of phys ed. I learned that from when I met Coach Reeve in 2009 in person, and I remember hearing about it 20 years ago. They've been doing, athletes go to strength training. If you're on a sport team, football has a class, wrestling has a class, track has a class. It's called strength and conditioning. We don't do that in New Jersey. And so what do we have? We have kids that lift at school, lift with private coach, different coaches. And they're so busy doing all this stuff, but they're not maximizing it. They're just trying to survive to get to the next thing they got to do. And so they're not thriving. And to me, that's a major red flag. But going back to, like, adults have changed. Adults created these businesses that got them going all over the place. You know what I say to parents? Listen, we do everything under one roof: speed, strength, power, athleticism. If you feel we're not getting the job done, I don't want you to resent us. Go to another coach where you're happy. But when we have kids that go to these places that focus on speed and agility, they come back actually less coordinated and weaker. Like, they don't know how to, all right, we taught them how to do a hang power clean, a basic movement. They come back, they move like shit. They can't squat deep because they're just too busy moving their feet. They're not doing ranges of motion, putting their bodies in different shapes. And so that's a red flag for me. And I'm not saying we're better, but what I'm saying is we try to be a holistic, hey, here's the strength and conditioning umbrella. We try to implement a lot of stuff to make you an all-around better athlete, so you move better. So if you decide that you're not going to wrestle anymore and you decide you're going to throw shot put, or you're going to swim, or you're going to start running track instead of this, or you want to play tennis, we've made you athletic so you could kind of have more of a seamless transition. Whereas I feel like a lot of places are good at drills, but not good at making the athlete. So I could run to this cone and back and move my feet and but I'm not better at fill in the blank sport. And so that's what I'm picking up on today. So our focus is athleticism. And I don't know if you're going to include the pre-recording, but I was asking you guys who created the best system or model for training athletes. So what did we say?
Rich said the Russians. I said Louis Simmons.
Right. So Louis learned from the Russians, which before Russia was the Soviet Union. But I was telling, so if we were wrestling coaches, we were also the strength coach. They called you the physical preparation coach, but we did both. And you had a very keen understanding of what the athlete needed because you were assessing them at all times. You were running wrestling practice, so you watched them drill and live wrestle. So if you watch them struggle to get a lift on a takedown, you knew legs and back needed to get stronger. If they lacked speed, you knew they needed to sprint and jump and throw med balls and do power movements and dynamic effort with the barbell. And then the coaches would get a master's or PhD in. So Richie, what you coached when you were coaching track, did you coach all the seasons, or was it one season, or the events?
I did. There were times I did cross country, indoor and outdoor track. Yeah.
So Richie might get his master's in, the 5K, like mastering the 5K, or his master's might be in running the last 400 meters of the 5K. And then he would do all this research and he would test all the athletes, and he would put this group and say, okay, this group is just going to focus on 400-meter sprint repeats with, incomplete recovery. And then the control group is going to do, we're going to implement strength training, and we're only going to implement one exercise, and it's going to be the sumo deadlift. And we're going to do, a wave, like Louis Simmons would do, like a 12-week wave. So he would do 65, 70, 75, 70, 75, 80, 75, 80, 80, so you would run these tests, and that made you so dialed in to what athletes needed. But today, how much do I know? If I'm training a kid, he may have gone to, we know I'm in Manasquan. So we got a kid that goes to elite who might also go to Triumph, who's then doing privates at Sure Thing. And then he's lifting at school sometimes. And, it's I can't even, there's so much things going on that it's just impossible. And so people could hate the Soviets, the Russians, but the Eastern Europeans had the model. They had the system. Whereas when you're young, multiple sports. And then we're going to look at the sport and decide when by testing everybody, we're going to decide when you need to specialize. And if we specialize too early, we know it backfired because we tested that. Or we're going to put you in a sport, not just by what your parents want, but what is your physical structure?
Yeah.
And also what is your psychological, where do you psychologically move to? So somebody who fights a lot in school, that kid will enter wrestling and boxing. Back then there wasn't jujitsu or judo. You're short and stocky, you're probably going to be a weightlifter. You're tall and lanky, you'll high jump. Maybe you'll play volleyball or water polo or basketball. You're going to do what you're best suited to do physically. And so we early specialize in sports, and that's why we see I'd love to hear what you're seeing, Richie, down south. Jimmy, Florida, physical education. And actually, I got a buddy that is in Florida that's kind of like in charge of, I think, like I'm not sure if I'm giving it the right word. He's like an administrator for like Florida schools, like homeschooling, and also the education that goes into the juvenile correction facilities. So he went through my certifications. He's trying to get strength and conditioning into the correctional facilities. But what we're seeing now are kids that can, throw 80-mile-per-hour fastball, but can't do one pull-up. That's a problem on the elbow and shoulder.
Yeah.
By the way, Jimmy graduated, he's youngest out of all. How many kids in your high school had to get a surgery due to a sport injury? Do you remember any?
Maybe here and there, but not not a lot. I mean,
Yep.
if maybe I wouldn't even say kids I went to high school with, but kids from the club, I would say probably out of 100 kids, let's say maybe like 3 or 4.
It's probably more than, well, the number of kids you were around. You went to what high school?
I went to
Beach?
Point Barrow and I wrestled
Borough.
that Shore thing.
Point Borough. I remember Mike Mal talking about, because you were at Middlesex,
I went
right?
to Middlesex, yeah.
And then you're at the club. So actually you were around hundreds of wrestlers. And then I'd say Richie and I, the only kid I know that had surgery was my older brother in all 4 years of high school. He had his meniscus scoped. But now, if you want to come to my high school, we're going to look at torn shoulder labrums, torn ACLs, girls soccer, wrestling, broken elbows from baseball players, torn, UCL, Tommy John surgery. We're looking at a massive uptick of surgeries. And let's just not even pretend we have strength and conditioning knowledge. If I'm just like a general dude, I'm going to say, well, I think they play the same sport too much. They don't do multiple sports, so it's overuse. And if things are breaking, then those muscles, tendons, and ligaments are not physically capable of handling the rigors of sport. I don't even got to be a strength coach to understand that. That's just basic shit. But I'm sorry, Mrs. Airey. I was going for the no curse. But nobody seems to want to listen. As much as people are shouting from the rooftops, play multiple sports, do proper strength training. You mentioned TikTok and things like that. We thought that more information would get the, people knowledgeable. There's more information than ever before. And kids at my high school still, say they can't squat all the way down. 15-year-old tells me I have a bad back. My knees are bad. My back is bad. Kids, when left to their own training, will go to a gym and do bodybuilding machines and think that the slow machines with forced reps and slow motion is going to prepare them for a high-speed sport like baseball or wrestling or football. And so more information has not made the impact we hoped it would make. So, interesting times for sure.
Rich, you have one? Because I got a couple, but I don't know if you put your hand up or not.
No, go ahead.
All right.
I'll get to
So,
it.
Zach, there's a couple things you mentioned there that really piqued my interest, but you mentioned the kids being different and maybe, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but not as tough and kind of get injured easy. But one thing you taught me as a young coach was when someone comes in for a free trial or a free 2 weeks, they're not trying you out. You're actually testing them out to see if they're going to fit with the program. And you told me early on, like, you had no problem telling a kid and a parent, like, nah, we're good. So, like, once you told me that as a young coach, I was like looking for it. I was like looking for a kid that, like, yeah, you're not gonna work. And I did it, and I might have cost Mike some business, and it might have started an issue. And hindsight being 2020, I don't know if I should have let the kid train there. But my question to you is, do you still have that policy? Has that changed over the years? And how do you kind of like manage that when maybe none of these kids would have been able to train with you 10 years ago?
What a perfect question. I say it all the time to my coaches. I'm like, man, I'm like, I'm a wimp now. And I don't know if I changed because I'm a dad and I'm like, saw my kids grow up and I just took a different coaching role. Like now my vision, my view of when training kids is I say, how would I want this kid to be trained if this was my son or daughter? And I say that to my coaches. I go, you don't have kids, but pretend you're like staring through a glass window and you're watching somebody train your son or daughter. How do you want that workout to look like? What do you want them talking to your kid about? Just baseball, just volleyball, just wrestling, just, football? Or do you want them talking about life and mentoring them? So I've taken on that approach. That's number one. Number two, back then it was a tryout. And I think from a business sense, I was able to do it because there was really no strength and conditioning facilities. And it was not uncommon for people to travel 45 minutes to an hour each way to be with us. Now you could be in a small town of, I'm in a 2 square mile town. There's no other strength and conditioning in my town, but there's a lot of like fitness facilities. There's just stuff everywhere. So from a business standpoint, people could leave. People are intimidated by what we do. Whereas back then, I think we attracted this kind of there was a mystique to the underground. And I'll tell you, like, my logo is a tire flip logo because we flipped tires and we did a lot of strongman training. We didn't flip a tire once this year. Part of me is like, you got too many kids that can't flip when we have the smallest tire. I'm always like, is somebody going to get hurt? And then I'll come across old videos and I'll see like a kid who weighs 125 flipping a 600-pound tire at my gym, just like battling through it with his, with other kids cheering him on. We had different kids. And because they had a different mentality is exactly why we had kids that were 4-time all-state wrestlers, football players going and competing in college at a high level. We don't have that anymore. Kids, you scare them off when you kick their ass. And a while ago, I remember saying to my coaches a long time ago I was like, listen, we don't get beasts. Beasts don't want a coach. They don't need a coach. Everybody needs a coach, but they don't think they need a coach. They want to do, I always have this saying in air quotes, I'm on my own program, right? I bought a book. I'm looking online, I'm online. So I contribute probably to some of those problems, but I tell them it's our job to build them into beasts. So now we call it a free trial and an assessment. But I also tell the parents, I go, listen, we assess your kid every training session because things change physically and emotionally. And we match the training to meet them where they are and take them brick by brick, inch by inch, step by step along the way. Whereas I think before we were throwing you into the fire and I'm older. I'm almost 49. So sometimes I'll look at a video and I'm like, I can't remember that kid's name. But I'm like, man, like that kid struggled and we just kept pushing him and pushing him. And I'll tell you how kids change too. In Edison, if somebody had to throw up, they would like run to the end of the parking lot and throw up against the fence. Or I'd see kids throw up while running and not stop. Then when I opened up Manasquan, a kid just like sat outside and threw up on himself and didn't get up. And I was like, oh, this is the difference is like, they've never been pushed and they don't know that feeling. I had one kid throw up on the turf and I was like, what the F are you doing? Get the F out. I'm like, don't you feel that you're throwing up? He's like, no, I didn't even know. And so when people are like, hey, parents listen, kids, depending on environment, are different. You guys grew up in Beach. I'm in Manasquan. the kids here are so nice. Look, I raised my kids here. You think they ever got into a fight? In Edison, I always say, I started strength training, not for wrestling. I started strength training because when you would leave the middle school, there was always like these, we call them the dirt bags. They were out back and they were either going to try to kick your ass, steal your bike. This guy's hiding, trying to chase you here, there. In Manasquan, if things go wrong, I just kids are going to go to the beach and they're going to watch the sunset and they're going to go surfing and there's like no pain. And here's another way kids are different. I look on the Shore Conference website and I'll watch a dual meet. I'll look at the scores and every match, maybe one or two, goes the distance. Every other match ends in a pin. 14 weight classes, 14 pins in 90 seconds. I mean, everybody's pinning somebody. And I asked my coach, he goes, hey, he's like, kids, it doesn't embarrass them to lose in front of a crowd. He's like, they're on their phone 10 minutes later and they just think, I'll just try next time. So yes, that trial back then, you were trying out to be part of the underground. Even my prices were actually more expensive back then when I was less intelligent. Why? It's not what you price it as. What is your value as the coach? It's what people value in you. And so now I take on this more of like this caretaker, dad, strength coach role. And I teach my coaches how to communicate with kids, how to build their confidence, how to push them just a little bit. And next time, that little bit more. So you don't scare them and break them down. You're just building, building, building. I do believe we need more of that intensity. You need to get some of that shock. And I remember, if a kid would quit, he knew if he quit during the trial, you are not allowed to come back. You could come back 6 months or a year and try out again, but you now have to go home and work. You have to start running and doing calisthenics. And our trial was, I haven't done it like this for a while. You would do squat, lunge, push up, band face pulls, and then like dip bar, hold yourself up, knee raises. And then I remember one day a kid couldn't hold himself up on the dip bar in Manasquan. And I was like, that's weird, man, because that's easy. And then it started hitting me like, I say to this to coach, never underestimate how weak these kids are. You think 10 push-ups is normal? We have kids that show up who can't do one push-up. I'll see freshman football player who can't do one push-up. And then we just got a new football coach at my school and he makes mandatory lifting. And a lot of kids quit who would not lift from November until July. So they would leave, for 8-9 months. And I remember saying to a kid, bro, you're 130 pounds. Aren't you afraid to play football? People have been paralyzed playing the sport. High school kids have died. Are you not afraid that you're not big and strong? And I had a kid look at me and say, no, not really. And it wasn't a joke. He was dead serious that he doesn't think being skinny and weak was some sort of weird disadvantage in football. Whereas my job as a strength coach and as a father is to protect the kids. How do I protect you? I got to get you strong. I got to build body armor, muscle, and I got to get you tough. When I say strong, that's an umbrella phrase. Power, conditioning, durability. I know the fancy phrase today is robust. It's such like a fake nerd word. Durability means all the carries we've always done, the sleds, the GPP, which by the way, the GPP model was really inspired and educated to me by speaking with Louis Simmons like crazy. Just training wrestlers and football players for time. Hey, you're going to have your wrestlers sled drag for 10 minutes before they could even squat. And I remember the first time I did it, they were dead. They couldn't even squat. And I tested that stuff on myself. I'd be like, okay, Louis said, put a plate on the sled and drag the sled for, 30 minutes, real light because I was rehabbing my ACL. Whatever he told me to do, I did it. But I was 28, 29, and then 15-year-olds couldn't do it. So I thought it was weird. So the answer, long answer. By the way, I cannot answer questions like in a minute. I don't do that anymore. I would put myself out of business. But Jimmy, maybe, if I'm become a millionaire and money is never an object to me, the gym would be free, but I would go back to a tryout process, which who did that? Ken Shamrock's team, the lines then. It was like 500 Hindu squats, 500 push-ups, grappling for 2 hours. It was a test. Now, if you do that in high school, Richie probably knows it, you get fired. You almost have to accept everybody on the team. And there's too much wiggle room, which is why we see a lot of kids get injured, meaning kids will be like, I can't practice Wednesday. I'm going to work. If I ever said that to my wrestling coaches, I know they would be looking for hidden camera. You're working and not training. And by the way, they compete so much that the season is easier because you don't have as much practice. You wrestle Wednesday and Friday, and Saturday you're holding a tri or quad meet. I had one tri meet a year, and we wrestled Wednesday, Friday. And it was like, thank God, because that match is infinitely easier than 2.5 hours of practice with no water. We would warm up for 30 minutes hard, drill for an hour, hour and a half, and then the remainder was live, 30 to 60 minutes. It was a war zone. It was like, it killed the body. I think it was too much. 2.5 hours destroyed us. It destroyed me. I would have been better off lifting in season, wrestling 90 minutes, short. But I'm sorry, I don't do that anymore. We don't do a lot of stuff that we used to do, although I think we should get back to it.
Well, I think I already know the answer to this, but who's tougher, GMC kids or Shore Conference kids?
There's a big argument, that I think that Shore Conference website may have done like the numbers, and Shore Conference may have sent the most state qualifiers. GMC I don't think is as tough as it once was, although this is a tricky question, Richie. GMC I felt was very street tough.
Yeah.
The type of people have changed up in that area. If GMC was combined with that kind of like Union and Bergen area, that's a different thing. The Shore, Steve Rivera said this to me 15 years ago. He said, the kids down here just live hard. He's like, they don't necessarily like train hard. He's like, they'll wrestle a lot, then they'll surf a lot, then they'll, go spearfishing. They'll just do everything like living hard. But the preparation, he said, was not what the Shore Conference was like into. They were more into doing the sport. So it's tough to say, man. And GMC and Union County, I don't think has the toughest tournament that it once did. Like Union County is a one-day tournament. GMC, Friday you'd wrestle. And then if you made it out of that, you were alive for Saturday. Did we go into Sunday? I don't think so. Tournaments are a little bit weird, but I haven't had tough kids down here at all compared to my Jersey kids. Think of this. Charlie Frankel was part of a group that I talk about often. And Charles, I can't remember if he went to the regions his sophomore year, but his sophomore year, he broke his collarbone. But he weighed like 92 pounds, wrestling 103. And then the next year he took 6th in the state, and then the next year took 3rd in the state. And when he took 3rd, he won the region, and the kid he beat won the states. So Charles was a 2-time All-State. Sophomore year, I don't think he went regions. Him and his buddies, like Jimmy, maybe lost first round in the regions. TJ Mitchell didn't make it to the regions. Chris Orzechowski didn't make it to the regions. 2 years later, everybody was All-State. 1 year later, Charlie was All-State. I can't remember the last time I had an All-State wrestler at the Underground. 1 year, it was like 4 or 5 years ago, we didn't have one state qualifier. It was the first time in my coaching life over 20, well, that would have been 20 years, that I didn't have a state qualifier. I'm talking there were state qualifiers from the garage. And I am an infinitely better coach than I was 20 years ago. But it goes to show you, here's the other thing about the kids changing. This a wrestling coach, Nick Coco on Instagram. He's Coach Coco, COCO. He said, he goes, dude, it's like, I think he like politics, socialism. He's like, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. What we're seeing is the kids who are placing in the States can walk onto a D1 team. And then there's this massive gap of kids getting killed. So for example, on day one of the Shore Conference tournament, Richie, everybody gets pinned. And then the next day, matches actually start happening. And if you're in the top 5 or 4, you're probably a state qualifier. You know, we had a kid at my school place 5th last year as a sophomore. He didn't qualify for states, but also now qualifying for states is top 4 in the region. I really don't like that. I really think it should be 3. It should be 3. But what we're seeing is the top. It's not like top, middle, bottom. It's top, way up here, and then everybody else is just like survive. They're like just surviving. I mean, everybody's getting pinned. To me, that's also red flag. Why are you getting pinned so much? Technical, lack of strength. And at the high school level, if you could get very strong and blend it with good technique, not even great technique, you have a good chance. But now these kids are so technical. Like CBA starters are nationally ranked. Whereas you go to a public school, and like I said, many freshmen can't do 10 push-ups. So kid who could barely do 10 push-ups, who's thinking about wrestling and maybe wrestles, and also I play football or I play baseball, and then CBA kid. I'm going to CBA, and I'm going to, you know, I want to be a state champ, and I want to go to a D1 school. We really can't compete against private schools anymore. Private schools need their own district and region, and then they could go to the states. That would actually make it competitive, because the state tournament is just a dual meet of private schools right now. That's what it is. They're killing it. There's a couple public schools, Southern Regional,
Yeah,
and a couple others, but not many. Not many.
when did that flip?
I feel that certainly around the past 6, 7, 8 years, we're really
Yeah.
seeing that. You know, when I was younger, I think Richie, we're about the same age. When did you graduate high school?
94.
Yep, I'm 93. You know, who was the private, you know, Bergen Catholic. I don't even know if they were great, you know, back
'cause
then.
we were coming out of it like when we first got into school down in South Jersey. Paul VI was good when they used to have states at Jadwin Gym. They used to have the robes.
Camden Catholic.
Camden Catholic.
Yep.
But it was very uncommon when we were in school for a parochial school or a non-public school
Yep.
to be.
And also, public schools are now choice schools. You go to Paulsboro, you probably don't live in Paulsboro. You know, you can, Manasquan here, basketball is huge. You could pay to go to the school and not live in Manasquan and be on the basketball team. So we're like we have like mini college, we have like modified college rules. So to be great in sport takes so much work. You know, my daughter's a senior. In the summertime, it's not odd for her to like play 4 hours of tennis a day. She might go to a strength training session in the morning for 45 minutes to an hour, then go. So 5 hours of training a day. It's yesterday she had a match. Then she went to the park to practice more on her forehand. Then she was at my gym at 7:15. So match, practice again. But like, she's preparing for that next level of college. You know, she's obviously preparing for the state tournament, but she reminds me of wrestlers who are winning. Like in high school, she's kind of like crushing people. She's had one match that was kind of tough, but there's a massive gap because some kids are on the team and she's hates losing and she's training to be elite. And so we're seeing that in wrestling. You know, a good example is somebody who followed a system is John Poznansky, who's at Rutgers. John Paz was a 4-time all-state wrestler. He won the state senior year, but he did the underground and he did Yale Street Wrestling Club with Donnie DeFilippis. Boom. He also went to another guy, Harry. I don't know his name, for like footwork. And I got to say this about an athlete. Like, I was like, listen, it's so hard to add more to what you're already doing. You know, in my opinion, when I think about footwork in wrestling, I think about speed drilling, and I think about Buddy Lee, who was a All-American
Okay.
wrestler, a Greco wrestler, and Buddy Lee did power jump rope, power endurance with interval training. I met Buddy Lee at a CrossFit certification at the Quantico at the Marine base, the FBI base. And we were talking wrestling, and we were talking throwing tree logs and throwing stones and training for power. And, you know, we were 30 minutes, like, forgot to eat. We were just talking about wrestling and power. And so I don't think about, and this is no offense to anybody who's doing that stuff, but it's like, how much stuff can I add to an athlete's plate before it's just overflowing, you know? But you have somebody like John Paz who loves to train psychologically. I'm going to meet him where he is. Physically, he wrestles better when he's got he likes to do strength training. So it depends. Who am I talking about, right? I know I would have done better with like a 90-minute practice and 2 strength sessions per week, which is what Jim Bashada did. When Jim Bashada was a senior, I would like lower his workouts to 25 minutes. He was optimal. TJ Mitchell was lifting with football players out of my garage who were lifting very heavy. He responded to heavy lifting because he came from his dad's old gym, which had some old school powerlifters. So TJ Mitchell on his first day, I remember doing things like parallel bar dips. He did like 30 reps. I put a band around his neck and did band resisted dips. I don't even do dips with high school kids because it often hurts their sternum. They haven't developed the cartilage yet. TJ Mitchell was a sophomore, and I'm fucking putting a band around his neck to do dips because I was like, how do I try to challenge this kid? He was like killing everything. It's because he was lifting at his dad's gym, and he was strong, man. And sometimes I forget he was like 125 pounds. He was lifting with kids who weighed 220, 240. Different kids. That's the facts. Different kids. They were different, man.
Yeah, I wrestled TJ Mitchell when he was a 3-pounder, and no one knew who he was, but it was like a super close match because he was super strong. And then
He was
Jim Bashada, I remember in high school, he was a sophomore when I was a senior. We wrestled at a scrimmage, and it wasn't close. And then I wrestled him when I was coming back. He was just graduated high school, and I was coming back to wrestle with Mike, and it was the opposite. I was like, what happened to this kid? Like, this kid got really, and he was so strong. So that stuff really stood out to me. And like I said, I saw those kids lifting on YouTube, and you were an early adapter on YouTube. You're the guy who introduced me to Elliot Holes. You're the guy who helped Elliot get out there, and now we see him. And my question off of that is, how has the social media and the YouTube being an early adapter helped the business? And how have you kind of changed? Because we were talking about before how, kids are too inundated with stuff on social media. Do you still find that it helps the business?
It's a great question. Back then, it was very helpful with the business because nobody was doing it. I was posting a video every day for 6 months. So when somebody's like, hey, I want to do this, I'm like, I did it every day, 7 times a week, 6 months. And I say, some people are like, I haven't posted anything. I think it's important because people are watching us on social. Parents will watch you for months, for over a year before they decide to pull the trigger. You never know what's holding somebody back. A lot of time, my buddy said this to me, good friend of mine, Jonas. He said, man, he's like, I think you were too early. People weren't really ready for it. And then what happened is this generation right under me came and became great at video editing. And I was like, I don't even know how to figure that out. And just, there was this professionalism to the videography, and every guy was like shredded. And maybe they were just young. I always say, when I was young, I was shredded too. And it was like, if you can't take your shirt off the whole time, people aren't watching you. And so sometimes you see a video on like Instagram. I don't know what those videos are called, or a meme where it's like when nobody told the strength coach he had to become a professional videographer. And the guy's just like, you're like, man, I thought I just had to be great at my craft, at coaching and communicating. Oh, no. Now I got to be great at videography. And I personally, I'm getting close to 50. I don't like that I have to spend time on the phone. I really don't want to do it. I would love the day when we're not at all on social media. And some people have done it. They've created a very small bit, like a one-man operation where there's no videos that need to be. Like I had Andy Baker on my podcast a year ago. He markets to people only in their 50s and older. He's like, I don't got to post stuff on social media for them. Everything's word of mouth and referral. And so, all right, is social media important for business? Yes. You get the word out there. It's, people are, that's how people find out. That's where people are. That's where you need to meet them. The bad thing to it is people are only scratching the surface. They might see one video of you doing, let's say deadlifting. And now they think all you do is deadlift. They don't look at another video and watch you jumping, sprinting, or they don't see a middle school kid in the video. So then they're like, I can't go there. They only deadlift and they only train high school kids. And so I found that it's actually worked against people because people consume information and make a massive generalized assumption over one video. They don't go down the rabbit hole. Somebody will say to me, oh, I've been following you for years. And then they don't even know that the Underground Strength Conference is coming up. They're not reading the emails. Here's a real tricky example. We made a video for the Underground Strength Con, and it said, coming November 15th and 16th to Varsity House Gym. And it was a promo video. And then I sent that video to multiple coaches, inviting them to speak. And almost all of them responded, yes, tell me when it is. And I'm like, it's in that video I just texted you. And I think we're so used to swiping that we don't see things. We don't enjoy what's right in front of us. And I think it's kind of negatively impacting the way we could consume and perceive information. So it's very tricky. And I honestly I idolize coaches who could be in a place where they don't touch it or they outsource it for somebody. But when I'm posting stuff on social and I'm writing, whatever with my fingers, that's from the heart. And I really don't have anybody that could replicate this conversation that's going on in my own head, the message I'm trying to relay. And I think Donnie Pritzloff doesn't use social. Other people at Columbia University will post social on his behalf. And when he was at Rutgers, I don't know if his role was they hired recruiting coordinator. So he was head associate coach. I don't need it. I could just show up and coach. The purity of that, to me, I miss those days. And to me, that was beautiful. I remember the early days, there was no iPhone. It was a flip phone. I actually had a regular phone at my gym. And so if I took a picture of you, it was with a digital camera. And then I'd have to plug it in and upload stuff. But, kids today think it's totally normal that you're coaching them and holding a phone. They think it's completely normal. At my high school, kids wear AirPods and this and that. And I tell them, when I'm coaching you, no phones. Because how are we training as a team? How could you even hear me coaching you if you have your AirPods in? And are you even on this team if your music is more important than them? So I just say, hey, here's a playlist. Everybody add your own music. Now we're listening to your music. And now you don't need the AirPods, but for 45 minutes, let's just be in this, all in without our phones and be, united. And so when I'm watching a coach at a high school training a kid who's squatting with this on, I'm like, you're not actually training him. He's tuned out. He's in his own world. And in my, possibly or probably wrong opinion, takes away from the purity of it. I remember Coach Buxton, when I was helping at Blair, he invited me to the banquet. He invited me to their own home match. You had to get on a guest list. And I remember they did a little documentary. And this class was a bunch of killers. There was a bunch of national champs on that team. But I remember Coach Buxton was sometimes I let the kids play their music, and I don't really think that's music. He's sometimes I get to play my music and the kids hate it. He's like, but sometimes I play no music because the best music is listening to your heart and listening to your feet, to your wrestling shoes on the mat. It's like that to me is the best music. And when he said that, I was like, this guy's my bro. Like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, I could train to no music and just hear the weights and hear my heart. And to me, that's the best music. No, I'm about to lift something heavy. I need my best music. Well, I remember a kid, they wrestled P-Berg, Howell kid. He's like, man, I got so psyched out. I ran out and the people put up their newspaper. And he's like, this grandma was in the front row slamming her walker. She's telling me I'm going to lose. And I'm like, see, because you guys want perfect. You want your music. But then when you go to the away match and they're cursing at you and screaming at you, you break, all because of words or music. And so that was the underground, guys. It was all about imperfection making you better. And today, everything's perfect. Keep your back flat. You didn't go low enough. You trained too slow. Attach, velocity tracking on there. You need to go lighter. This, that. The art of coaching is gone, man. It breaks my heart. What about Richie? What about Without Limits, that movie?
Mm-hmm.
That to me is perfect. When coach is like, it's like, Pre, you got to pace yourself. He's like, F that. He's like, there's no beauty in that. He's like, there's no guts. I want nothing to do with that. I'd rather lose. He was a purist. It was this run to test the human spirit. He didn't want the strategy. The strategy took away from the beauty of it. Now, look at us, guys. Freaking giving kids Maseratis and shit to wrestle. I mean, it is what it is, but where's the purity in that? Where's the beauty? What are you fighting for? You're going to a school based on the car they give you? Listen, I love seeing these kids make money. Some of these kids are getting paid, and I've heard from the firsthand sources, 300 grand, 600 grand for one season. Come back, we'll pay you $500,000. That's inspiring. But there's also something about it where it's, what did Mickey tell Rocky in Rocky 3? He's like, the worst thing that can happen to a fighter is you got civilized. You got all this money. You got this beautiful house. Rocky only would win when he'd go back to the old school. And gym like that won't make money. It will not survive. You'd have to make it a nonprofit. People they don't want that stuff no more. It's a shame. You got to want
to get rust on their hands.
Dude, I'm even thinking, I think I got to get air conditioning at my gym. Hits 94 degrees in the summer in my gym. It's friggin' hot. The air is heavy, but kids can't do it. We've had kids quit the gym because it's too hot, and then here I am thinking to myself, I think it's dangerous. I'm starting to overthink because kids will pass out. I had a kid pass out at my high school after just doing a little movement prep. And again, the kids that show up for training, they're not the beasts. The beasts are deadlifting at Retro Fitness. They're just friggin' figuring it out, training hard. But the kids showing up to train are very far behind, if you know what I mean. They're not tough.
No. Talk about the music and stuff, Zach. When we had Coach John on, he said, if you need music, you're afraid of the bar.
Damn. Because there's such beauty to plates clanging. I never had bumper plates for a long time. Bumper plates in the early days was like, if somebody had bumper plates, you're like, how did you find them? Did God give you these things? Like, who gave you these things? You couldn't believe it. I remember I did go to a seminar. I helped Mike Mahler organize a seminar in New York City, and Christian Thibodeau was going to teach Olympic lifting. And I signed up and I helped them find a location. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to learn to power clean. Only like the gods know how to power clean. It was like 2003. And then Christian Thibodeau couldn't make it. So I'm not sure what happened. Could have been like passport issues to come to New York. But I was like, damn it, I was about to learn like this such complicated thing. There was no YouTube to get you to learn on your own. You had to look at pictures on the early CrossFit Journal, which I thought was a pretty good thing. But Dan John is right. I'm going to lift to no music next time, just on my old rack. We call it the prison rack. It's all steel plates, and you could hear them going like, like that. I'm going to no music next time, guys.
Yeah. Zach, I love listening to the podcast and listening with you with Wendler and listening with you with Wellborn, because a lot of the stuff that you guys say resonates with a lot of the stuff I do with the kids in terms of, no headphones. We'll make our own class playlist, but you got to be able to listen. I can't coach you if you don't hear me. You need to be
Yeah.
aware of your surroundings. Like,
Yes.
weightlifting it can be one of the safest things, but it can also be very catastrophic real quick. And we need to be aware of our surroundings. I'm a big fan of goblet squats. So when I heard you guys talking about goblet squats, I'm like, all right, I'm doing the right things.
Well, first of all, talking with Jim and John is so easy to converse with those guys. And it's amazing how many kids think they're above goblet squats. I'm like, listen, guys, if you're mad at me, just grab the 100 and bang out 20 deep squats. Prove me wrong. And I always say, does the referee ask you how much you could bench before he gives you what is the high school takedown still 2 or is it 3?
It's going to be 3 this year.
It is. Okay. So, the 2 sounds much better than 3. 2 always sounds better, but nobody asks, right? I always tell them strong is strong. And today, I had a kid that just insisted on squatting the bar. He didn't squat low, feet were too wide, knees caving in, still squatted, but did it wrong. Had the bar too high, just, 5 things wrong. The goblet squat keeps you young for the older guys also, because you got to bend. Back is strong, trunk is strong. Like, that's a great exercise, man. Can't go wrong with it. But I'm sorry, Richie. I struggle with
No,
podcasts sometimes because there's too much in my brain, I think.
that's why we had John.
Yeah. Yeah. And want to be super respectful of your time, but one more I got for you before we get into
I'm good. Whatever questions you have, because
All
I've
right,
been
'cause
interrupting and going nuts.
we got a whole list because, like I said at the beginning, you were someone who was very important to me as a coach, becoming a coach and teaching me a lot. So I got a lot here. Want to pick your brain, but you mentioned a bunch of names of people you worked with. You mentioned Mike Mahler. You mentioned Joe at the beginning of the podcast that you're friends with. Bunch of names. Talked to Louie, and I know you did stuff with the Ultimate Warrior before he passed.
Yes.
During this whole journey as a coach, have you ever had those kind of pinch you moments where it's like, wow, this guy's my friend now, or wow, I'm working with this guy?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have not. I always looked at it like this. This is a quote unquote old school way of thinking because I had this conversation with Joe DeSena. I was with him last week in Philly. Somebody was like, how'd you meet Joe? I said, Joe had a publicist reach out to all these people for podcasts in the early days, 14 years ago. I said, yes, of course I'll podcast with him. Then I said, Joe, that company just did a cut and paste email. It was so shitty. Let me just do it for you. And then I told the guy that Joe kept saying, I was introducing him to like Tim Ferriss, Lewis Howes. I was getting him on all the big podcasts. He's like, I have to pay you. What should I pay you for all this help? I said, Joe, this is going on and on. I said, Joe, do you ever have a friend that just said, I'm helping you out? You're my friend? Because that's what's going on here. I'm your friend and I'm just trying to help you win. I don't need you to pay me. And I think it was like a foreign thing because his business had grown and there was probably a lot of people that wanted to take from him. Ultimate Warrior was the same way. When he was going to speak at the Underground Strength Conference, the way he did it was he emailed me and we were talking every other day for like an hour. We'd always talk about family, lifting, and intensity. It was like the same stuff. And he emails me and said, Zach, I saw your Underground Strength Conference. It's coming up, and I'm actually doing an event a day or two before. And he said, I have a question for you. The TV networks are approaching me, and they want to do like Ultimate Warrior TV, where I'm mentoring young musicians and wrestlers and just people in the show business. And he said, I've been in the limelight. He's like, I don't really care for the limelight. He's like, but I don't want to do the strength training. He's like, I'll do the mindset. He's like, but if you do the strength training and you help me with these, this show, this TV network stuff that's popping up, he's like, then I'll speak at the Underground Strength Con if you'll have me. And I'll never forget those words, if you'll have me. And I responded, I said, Warrior Man, when you need a favor, I don't need a favor in return. I'm not keeping score. Do you want me to help you? I'll help you. And then he's like, yes. He responds. He's like, you're the fucking warrior beast coach. And so every email was no longer Zach. It was WBC, Warrior Beast Coach. And so he believed it so much in what he was doing. But that's probably why we connected. He had this intensity that was too much for people. They couldn't handle it. And when you're passionate and intense like me, it rubs people the wrong way. Like, I don't mean to interrupt you guys and cut you off, but sometimes it happens. And I'm talking about things, and I look back and I'm like, man, I cut those guys off. And then a lot of people be like, Evanish, you dick. Like, let Richie speak, let Jimmy speak. I could go with you guys for 8 hours, and I can't even I just get so much fire going. And I remember his wife told me, people, listen, I know Ultimate Warrior did I don't know what he said, hey, of course I did some steroids. What street drugs did he do when he was on? People are like, you don't think he did street drugs to get that heart attack? I'm like, listen, I think, like his wife explained it, that like his soul was so big, it was like too much for his like body to handle. And that's why he would disappear from the internet and whatever he was doing, because I think he realized like he was trying to help people, but it was just too much. He wanted people to help themselves. The pinch me moments, I don't know. Like, I still feel like I actually still feel like I'm struggling. That's the reality. That's the truth. I still feel like I'm some blue collar dude from Edison with these kind of average skills, but a very above average work ethic. And every day I still feel like I'm struggling. I wish I could have worked with Ultimate Warrior more, but then he got involved with WWE. Then he passed away. Working with Joe is always like, when Joe needs me, if he's close, I'm going to go do something with him, because my life, I feel like I'm living when I'm around him, but I don't ever feel like, whoa, pinch me. I don't know if I would ever feel that way. Do I feel gratitude? Yes. A couple of years ago, Marty Gallagher brought me to work with SEAL Team 6. That was, to me, a very special time, but also, in full transparency, it was a very confusing time for me. I had left Rutgers. I stepped away from Rutgers. I was offered a full-time position there. I declined it because of the money. I just couldn't say yes to that kind of pay as a family man. And the next year, I was so used to like always working. I went back and taught at the schools. And then I'm like training SEAL Team 6, DevGru. And I'm like, what am I even doing? Like, I'm here training the most elite military in the world, and I'm teaching elementary phys ed. And a year ago, I was, coaching a top 10 wrestling team. And I'm like, you got to just like, so I don't like, I guess the things like, I just understand work. And I think sometimes the people who are where they are, like, I think there's a little bit of luck. There's a little bit of timing involved with everything. And I'll say this too, guys. This kind of breaks my heart to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. Sometimes people force themselves into positions of success by befriending other successful people and kind of mooching off of them. And I've seen it. I've seen them like force themselves into social circles, and I would never do that and become somebody I'm not, to try to like be who they are. Like, I'm just like editing all these videos and and like being fake. And I'll be honest, like, people are like, oh, I don't give a shit about being ripped and taking off my shirt. It doesn't inspire me. What inspires me? I want to be better every day as a husband and father. I just stepped off the floor of coaching at the Underground literally a week or two ago. Doesn't mean I'm never coaching again, but I just learned that, like, if I'm going to grow it as a business, I actually need to step away, and if somebody wants to do private training with me, I'm going to do it at more of a premium. But, I'm just trying to do like brilliance with the basics in life. I would love it if I just did everything that I wanted to do, but even people who, like, it looks perfect on the outside, they're struggling too. But to this day, I'm like, man, dude, this shit don't get any easier. I'm still trying to be respected in this profession. I'm still trying to impact anybody and everybody I can in the way of strength and just speak my truth, about this. But I don't know where I really fit in this new world, this new age of strength and conditioning that is so technology and fancy focused when, I know what works. Things change, right? Wrestling has evolved, coaching must evolve, but I've seen what I see and have seen what successful people and athletes achieve. And it don't come through easy stuff. Listen, man, like I mentioned my daughter before. I watched my daughter start playing tennis in diapers, and she would win all through high school. She went to the States every year, but in these tournaments, she'd go like, 500. She'd struggle halfway. She'd cry. Sometimes, she'd come home and maybe lose more than she wanted. She'd be like, this sport, I hate it. And then this past summer and this like year, she's winning a lot, 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10. And I'm driving home from Georgia, driving through, I don't know where the hell I am, Tennessee, and she's asleep in the car. And I'm thinking to myself, like, she's about to turn 18. I'm like, she's playing tennis 14 years, but it took 13 years of going through hell to really start winning more. Who's going to do 13 years? I see kids get cut from baseball team freshman year, and they're like, yeah, I'm just moving on with my life. Moving on from what? What are we quitting from? Who has taught you to quit? Quitting is not cool. Battle, fight back. And that's like, I feel like I'm fighting back in life, just trying to get the word out there about being strong and kicking ass with the basics. That's what I'm just trying to do, man. Still struggle. It's still hard. It's harder than ever before, actually, because my videos get less views than they did 20 years ago, or 2006, 18 years ago. Put up a video, it gets 100 views, 60 views. 2 weeks later, 400 views. I'm like, dude, this video costed me $200 to make with a videographer. It's 30 minutes. It's amazing content. But like, what does it take anymore? Do I got to light my hair on fire? So that's the struggle, is like, like Gladiator. Are you entertained? What, I have to entertain you. That's what people want. Or maybe the truth is, maybe my stuff's not as good as I think it is. Right. So there's all these things go through my head, and, pinch myself working with somebody big name. I'm just trying to be a good friend. And to me, that's like basic strength training. I'm trying to get great at the basics. I'm not trying to be somebody's friend so they could give me something. When Joe and I do stuff, only once has it been for money, when I did stuff for his podcast, Spartan Way. Other than that, when we did Spartan Intensive Camp, it's free. What do I get up there? I get sometimes a crappy bed and free food. And to me, it's the best. Time with Joe is better than any amount of money, you could pay me. Same thing with you guys. If it's, by the way, it's interesting, with the Underground Strength Conference coming up, we pay our coaches a flat fee. And there comes a time where you're like, man, I want to get paid more. But sometimes you're not getting paid in money. You're getting paid to be in front of people. Those people are going to get into your world. Maybe they're going to buy your stuff. And so it's interesting. Like, I want to get paid when I speak at places, but most of the time when I speak, it's free, and it comes with free hotel and some food, not all food. But if it's all about the money, you're never going to do, I don't want to say never. I think you will rarely do the thing that's really in your heart, and that's what I try to do. Even if it means less money, I will always take less money to do the right thing rather than more money to be fake or do it wrong or fit in with everybody. I don't want to fit in. I just want to believe at the end of the night in my heart, I did the right thing by the kid or by whoever I'm working with, you know?
Amen.
Well, appreciate the perspective. And you said, you know, you still feel blue collar and you still feel like you're struggling, like you're a guy from Edison trying to
Yeah.
make it happen. Rich and I always say we think
Mhm.
at Edison High School that they taught a class on how to hustle because we don't know anyone from Edison who, one, isn't successful and doesn't have that hustle bone and just, you know, put their head through a wall and keep on going. We always say that.
We got lucky. Mike Mal, you know, got coached by Coach Nis. That was the next evolution of coaching. Nis would have been a much better coach for me. You know, he was such a great coach. I remember my younger brother said to me, like in the summer, he's like, I think I've wrestled something like 100. It was something like 120 matches. I'm like, 120 matches. I wrestled 4 off-season matches every Thursday. Coach Nis calling, Rami, there's a tournament here. Da, da, da. They were in cars going to Team Hammer, then the Edge, then traveling to tournaments. And it was like 100+ matches. Coach Nis was that was like the next evolution of coaching. He became a mentor to everybody. That's what he became.
Rich, you got anything for Zach before we get to Final Four?
I just want to add one more thing. You know, Zach, you talk about your daughter sticking with it and grinding for that long, and putting in the work where another kid gets cut from a baseball team and he's like, oh, I'm moving on with my life. And so I had a conversation with a kid today, talking about quitting soccer.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, you know, like you should just finish the season. Like that's just a good thing to do as a human, as a man. Like finish it through, see it through. If you don't want to play it anymore, after this season, then that's cool. But like it's just a good practice as a gentleman to do that kind of thing and live your life that way. But
Love it.
his reasoning was like, yeah, you know, I don't see myself being a professional. I'm like, well, you know how small of
Right.
like the population that's actually going to be a professional
Or
or even
even
go to
compete in
Division One.
college. Or even division, you know, compete in college, period. What about this? I tell kids, Richie, I go, listen, some of you I trained baseball for the first time yesterday. I go, some of you guys might get cut. But who you are now is not who you could be next year. If you get cut from baseball, can you still come to the weight room? Yeah, you could even come more. Now you have more time. Get strong AF. Can you join a travel team? You sure can. Can you come back better? 100 times better. Okay, now, are you willing to do the work? That's it, man. You got to be coachable. And then, mom and dad, I've noticed that if one kid quits, it's not odd to have a brother or sister who does the same. So what do you teach the kids? And by the way, my freshman year, I never won a wrestling match. I didn't know I was allowed to quit. I remember beating guys during the last week of practice. And they were like, dude, this is amazing. You're beating us. And then the one kid says, I shared it on Mike Mouse podcast. He's like, we've been betting every week about when you're going to quit. I didn't respond to him verbally, but in my mind, I said to myself, I didn't know you could quit. I thought you had to finish. I had no clue that was even an option. And if I would have taken my energy and put it into strength training and maybe going to judo, which I didn't know about, or going to the Edge, which we didn't know about, that would have changed everything. So I had the effort. I just didn't have the proper doing the things. And so it's to me, that's a bit heartbreaking. Now, but guys, sometimes you do need to quit things. Certain things need to be quit. But a lot of things in high school, we need to battle. We need to get better. We need to fight to get better. And I think it's up to parents. Like, I was just thinking to myself, wow, Richie said he should do, it's a manly thing. You know, oh, did you just say man? Like, you can't say man. Like, you know, down south, by the way, definitely different. I remember being down south the first year of COVID and nobody was wearing masks. I was like, oh, it doesn't exist down here. This is great. But it's just crazy. We've made way too many rules and we're trying to appease everybody when that's not helping anybody in life. You know, my son after he does rowing and baseball. So after crew, I was like, let's go get bagels. I know you got the pork roll question coming up. I got him the pork roll, egg and cheese. And I guess they cut the bagel like really thin and it was, screwed up. He's like, what the hell is this? The bottom. I was like, they were in a rush. They were busy. They screwed it up. I go, but now you know how it feels. So if you're mowing, he mows lawns. He's got a little landscapist. I go, how do you think people feel if you miss a spot? They don't like it. They don't like it if they see that you didn't do the edges. So don't screw it up because people will remember that time that you screwed it up. And I equated it to his pork roll and cheese sandwich.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep.
That's awesome. But yeah, it is definitely a little bit different down here. That's kind of one of the reasons why I appreciate it. And I tell people down here that in New Jersey, the best of the best kids don't say yes, sir, no, sir, thank you, sir. Whereas down south, even the so-called bad kids or the rough around the edges kids will still, you're scolding them and they'll say yes, sir, or
Yep.
thank you, sir. That's amazing.
We'll probably move down that way once my son goes to college or if he decides to go to college. But I remember I spoke at Georgia Tech. I may have been coaching at Lehigh, so it could have been around 10 years ago. And I spoke at Georgia Tech at a clinic, and a middle school principal came to watch me to start like implementing strength training. And he said, I'm here to see you, sir. And that guy was older than me, calling me sir. And I have a buddy that coaches in Alabama, and when he's recording, I hear him like calling the kids. He's like, way to go, Mr. Airey. He'll call the kid Mr. or the girl, Mrs. Airey, whoever it is. And I'm like, man, they just give respect.
Yeah.
It's very nice.
It is nice.
Nice.
It's
Refreshing.
refreshing. Yep.
Boom.
I owe you pork roll, egg and cheese.
Let's go, baby. Let's go.
Zach, you said coaching or being a parent made you a better coach because you see the kids as how would you want your kid to be coached. Has coaching made you a better parent?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yep. Because I learn, as Brett Bartholomew talks about, he has a program, Art of Coaching. He says you have to be a chameleon. And so my kids, as they go through different stages of life, their personalities change a little bit. And my buddy told me this, which has helped me be a better dad. My buddy Joe Ken, he's in North Carolina, Big House Power. He said, your kids are going to have a lot of coaches. He's like, but they're just going to have you as a dad, one dad. He's like, they don't need you to be the coach. But I also share with people, I've kicked my daughter out of my gym when she's not listening and being rude. If my son was screwing around in the gym, I've kicked him out of the gym. So once you enter the weight room, I don't view you as my child or special treatment. I view you as you're either working and following through or you're not. But what's interesting is I'm not really intense with my kids with sports. I give them the opportunity to do the work. And if they choose not to do the work, I give them the opportunity to fail. And I've shared, lessons like that with the kids I train. So I say, guys, it's up to you in baseball to go out and hit on the tee and eat healthy. In wrestling, do you guys need to go to a club? No, you can go. I live in Manasquan. You guys could wrestle on the beach. We wrestled in the backyard and in the living room. So I give my kids the opportunity to do the work. And then if they don't achieve, I remind them, hey, I told you, you had this opportunity, or I take you to this place and you're not utilizing it. And so I try to be like, here's opportunity. But my wife is, she's smarter than me and more strategic with me in things where, she's like, we left Edison. And so now we don't need to raise our kids like we're still in Edison. For example, hey, he touched you, knock his teeth out. Like, my wife's like, we don't really say that. And then I tell my son, don't listen to mommy. But hopefully, still got to settle some stuff on the street. But as a dad, I've learned a lot from other dads, friends that are, older than me. And just looking back to like things that, our parents, my parents, just the way we were raised in that generation. I'm real close with my kids, very close. And so That's not how it was when I grew up. My parents worked, cooked, and then you're kind of like on your own raising yourself. But my wife and I said, we're going to give our kids all the opportunities we never got. So everything we've done for my daughter that has gotten her to this place, it's costed a lot of money. It's been an investment. It's been a lot of time, but we've loved it. We made experiences out of every trip. It was never like, oh, we blended vacations with sports. And, now my son's a little bit older. And like last week, I was I'm like, dude, my son is rowing on the Navasink. I mean, I'm from Edison. You don't row. If you're near the water, you're trying to catch catfish, or you're like throwing rocks at a skunk, or you're like playing manhunt. It's just like blows my mind. And so in those moments, sometimes I could pause and say, man, I think I'm doing all right as a dad. I think we're doing okay as parents. And, and then it's my hope that they will, do better for their kids. And so we teach our kids to avoid the mistakes my wife and I made when we were younger. It's like school, I don't agree with a lot of stuff in school, but it's a vehicle to get you to this place. Being a great athlete, you guys know it. If us three were national champs, we would be treated differently. We would be treated like royalty, okay? People judge you by your accomplishments. That's the truth. Why do you think there's donors to the Rutgers wrestling team? Because when they could sit on the edge of that mat, they feel like they own part of the sports team. It's like, but they're able to do that because they got the money. They get to enter that circle. So I teach my kids, listen, you got to get good grades. It gets you into a college. That college, and then that sport team could expand your network. I learned that at Lehigh. That $25 million building was built by 8 people. Okay, that's 8 people putting in $3 million. That's a lot of money. But for them, they're probably like, yeah, I got $3 million. And so I tell my kids, that's who you got to be around. You got to expand your network, expand your network to grow your net worth. My son may not go to college, but he's learning from YouTube. He's learning how to grow his landscaping business from YouTube, which to me is awesome, but I tell him, hey man, that shit ain't easy. That's all manual labor. So I say, right now you're doing it, but just like where I am, I said, eventually you become the doer of the thing to the marketer and the manager of the things and the people, which is not what we got into it for. Mike Mal does all those podcasts. Rob Cole's like, dude, the worst thing a head coach should be doing is teaching a sweep single. You're supposed to manage the business. Bring in the 23-year-old guy to teach that. You got to manage the business. But you're like, dang it, my true love is wrestling. My true love is being in like a dingy weight room. That's not the moneymaker. So I'm sorry for dragging every question to 5 different directions.
No, Zach, we appreciate it. We appreciate sitting under your learning tree once again, and we appreciate the time you've given us tonight. You've already alluded that you know what's coming. And
Yes.
You already said pork roll. So pork roll Taylor ham.
Yeah, I don't know. This Taylor ham is out of control. Okay. I know Dan O'Cone said he heard somebody say it's pork roll. All right. But I didn't actually know that Dan said Taylor ham is the brand. I didn't know that. But when you ask for pork roll outside of New Jersey, they look at you like you're crazy. And I'm like, all right, I'll just do the bacon, egg, and cheese. But somebody who makes a good pork roll, you need to make it a little bit crispy. You don't want it undercooked. It's not good. So pork roll all day, baby.
Do you have a spot you go to for a good pork roll at the Jersey Shore?
Down here, I felt like it was a struggle to find a good spot. The bagels were like smaller. Some places didn't have the grill. And I'm trying to think, there's a place up the road from me. It's kind of like Wall Seagert. I'm not even sure what it's called. That's okay. But there's a place near where I work in Middletown called ABC Bagel. I think it's Atlantic Bagel Co. I think they have multiple locations. This one is in Lincroft, which is down the street from Christian Brothers Academy. It's in like a strip mall. They usually make a real good, they got big bagels. And also Red Bank
Bagel
I think
Masters.
that's it. No, not Bagel Masters.
No.
It's near the not far from Bon Jovi's like nonprofit restaurant. I think it's called dang it. I think it might just be called, I'm gonna look it up on maps. I think it's just called Red Bank Bagel. Red Bank Bagel Store. Dang. Bagel Station.
Bagel Station.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bagel Station is really good. I like that place. And then Dan mentioned one in Point. I've never been there, but it's a former wrestler. Point,
Oh, Vegas. Yeah.
going over that bridge.
I was gonna say OTB. You don't go OTB, do you?
Well, in the summertime, it's like,
Oh yeah,
will I
forget
make
about
it
it.
in? Can I make it into Point in 5 minutes or 25 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Sounds so
crazy.
weak worrying about that. I need a helicopter.
It is quite a trek to get over the bridge.
There's good places in Point though. There's that one big
Yeah.
place. What's that? It's a
There's
bigger.
Barons
It's like pretty big place.
on 35 going towards Bayhead.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
What's it called?
Barons, I think
That
is the
sounds
one.
about right. Yeah, that place is pretty good. I feel like you find the better ones in Central and North Jersey, and you know what it is? The population up north, we don't realize. Like right now, drive through my town at 6 p.m., it's like crickets. Summertime, it's like millions and millions of people. Up north, it's always busy. And
Right.
so I think they're used to that working man coming in, needing a bagel in 2 minutes. Pork roll, egg, and cheese, in and out the door. Central and North Jersey's pumping with that. No offense to the Jersey Shore. I've been here 16 years. I'm still like, I still don't think I fit in.
Zach, are you a coffee drinker?
Yes. So most of the time I drink tea at home. If I drink coffee at home, we have a French press. I'm not, a coffee guru. I'll pick up coffee from Trader Joe's, where we actually buy a lot of our food from. I like Trader Joe's. Sometimes companies will randomly send me coffee, and I actually go like right up the street to this like little convenience store. They make great coffee, and sometimes I'll just pick it up because the people are so nice in there that I just feel like I need to go in there. I do drink coffee. Oftentimes, I have a break in the early afternoon before I'm going to start coaching, and I'll go to Wawa and get a cup of coffee. But then, my wish, guys, my wish is to be able to just relax and have a cup of coffee and sit on a deck, like when we go to Lake George. A lot of times during the, with coaching, I'm drinking a cup of coffee to like give me this like punch in the face. It's probably not the healthiest thing to give me a little pickup, but I'll be honest, like working at a high school, working in a public school, all the rules stress me out a little bit. And I'm like, I just got to step out. I just got to get away from here. I still need, I still prefer the whole no rules thing, so I step out of school, get a cup of coffee, and it like gives me some fresh air. Yeah, nothing fancy though. I'm not like, Dan O'Cone's got the system. So what do you say? Sugar, milk, and then he's got the drip coffee, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
He's got it. That guy's locked in. I love that guy. I mean,
He's definitely locked in.
he is, man. He's the Dan Gable of Jersey Shore, actually, I would say,
He's intense.
Yeah, but he's very smart. Like everything he does and says, like you hear me, my emotions everywhere, the passion. Dan doesn't get too high, he don't get too low. He just knows how to do. That's a superpower. That's a skill. That's impressive.
I think having a daughter has helped him with that too. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I don't want to speak for Dan, but
Right. Everybody's so different. Girls, I have these rules when I train girls. So I go, rule number 1, don't argue with girls. Rule number 2, see rule number 1. Training girls made me a better coach. They learned me to be more understanding, not like jump down people's throat right away. So I'm when I coach at the high school, I'm more flexible thanks to training girls soccer. Yeah, they made me better. They made me better. They know it too.
Zach, do you have any daily practices or rituals that you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of Zach Evanesh?
Yeah, it's not so much that it makes me stronger. It's just what kind of puts me in the right state. I like to wake up before anybody in the house wakes up to get work done. The ritual takes a little time during the school year because I'm doing things for the kids, but I'll wake up, I'll drink 2 glasses of water, get hydrated, get the digestive system going. I'll usually put on like meditation music on Alexa, maybe country, depends on the time of the year, but something calm, lights a little bit dim. And then I start prepping breakfast for the dogs and breakfast for the kids. And then we have little dogs and they crap in the house. So I'm like picking up dog crap in the morning. So I was thinking to myself today, I'm like, damn it, I'm literally and figuratively sick of this shit. Like, I'm picking up shit in the morning. I'm like, I just want to get to the point where I'm making the food. And so I like to take care of, my family. So in the morning, I like a nice home cooked breakfast for the kids. So my son is always like eggs, toast with butter and jelly. I make baked potatoes and then I slice them up, put them on the frying pan. So he has home fries. I make my daughter a smaller breakfast, but I like them to have a nice home cooked meal because it reminds me when I grew up, I always woke up to a bowl of cereal and a glass of milk sitting out there, warm milk just sitting out there. And so somebody said to me, why don't you let your kids, let them build responsibility and make their own breakfast? And my wife's like, our kid would be skinny as hell if we didn't feed him. Like he needs to be fed. And also my daughter's going to college next year. We don't get these years back. So I don't mind that I'm treating them like king and queen, with that kind of stuff. And then sometimes I'm grilling in the morning. I'm grilling so much chicken from Trader Joe's that I make them lunch and put it in a thermos. It's usually chicken and rice, chicken and potatoes. So if I'm marinating chicken overnight, I might wake up at 5:30 and be grilling at 6 a.m. in the winter. And I don't mind it. I love it. I don't care if I'm cold. And wrestling taught me that. You're like, it's not like, oh no, I got to wake up early. You're like, I'm a wrestler. I love when it sucks. I'll wake up early and it's dark outside and I'm like, is this healthy that I'm still crazy? Like from wrestling? Is that a post-traumatic stress from wrestling where I'm still thinking I'm preparing for wrestling? So my morning is taking care of everybody. And then I come downstairs and I will, before I work, I might do some sort of physical exercise. So I know Danny O said he does 40 push-ups. I've been working on the neck. I don't know why it's not looking that big in the video, but I got the vein coming back. But I was like, dude, my neck when I'm making these videos looks skinny. So somebody sent me a harness with bands. So I'll do about like 50, 60 reps of neck work before I sit down. It's like the Monopoly, like pay to pass go or something like that. So I'll do something that's like physical. Sometimes I'll do a month of calisthenics. Like I do a challenge. I'm like, okay, you got to do 90, not 100 reps of, squats and push-ups. So I'll do like 33 squats, 33 push-ups in the morning, do it again in the afternoon. Then you got to do it again at night to get to your 100. So sometimes I do that, but I always do one physical thing before sitting at this computer. And then kids go to school. I get to work around 10:15. So I like to go to my gym and train, but we actually just started training adults. So my morning schedule might get a bit of a snafu in it. And, but I train more for I love to be strong, but mentally it's like a good release. It's good for your mental health. I tell my wife, like, I don't drink, I don't do no crazy shit, but I got to lift heavy weights. If I'm not in good spirits, send me to a gym. Even if I don't feel like I should lift, I'm like, man, I'm tired. I just do some strength training. I'm like, whoo, man, I feel alive. And yeah, last night I actually went to the gym, trained with my daughter. Cause like you get to a point like Aaron Brooks is like, I don't need to lift. If you've been lifting for a while, you have this base, you could kind of do anything and get strong. Aaron Brooks is like, I don't lift. I just, I wrestle. So I'm lifting people. So to me, physical activity to kick off my day is very good for the body. I think we should integrate it into the schools, Joe DeSena and I have spoke. Well, we'll never do it because we'll never be able to focus on one thing. But we always said we should open a Spartan school where before you enter, you got to do burpees, or like I would do more of the, in like these other countries where it's like a ritual into manhood where you lift a stone or lift an odd object. I would do that. I'd be like, okay, before we come in, it's 3 rope climbs, or it's farmer walk, or you're throwing an object, just something physical. I guarantee you those kids, it would be so good for their mindset before entering school, sitting down, no lights coming through. It's tough, Richie. Guys like you and I, we're a bit free spirited and we're working for the government essentially, which has a million rules. A little bit heartbreaking sometimes, to be honest. Yeah.
You're preaching to the choir right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like
So-
a little bit of it, just making a dent. And I find at my school that sometimes the non-athletes are some of the hardest working kids I have.
Yep.
Sometimes I feel like it's the athletes that feel like they don't take it seriously, or because you're a physical education teacher in a strength and conditioning facility and they're not paying you like they do to their gym or their speed coach or their agility coach. It's like, well, you can't possibly know as much as the guy I pay $100 a month to. And sometimes I'm like, do you want me to bring you my resume? Like, you can always Google me.
Google
But
that shit. Well, we went to an event. My buddy Paul and I, we don't work for them, but we're the state directors for NHSCA, National High School Strength
Yeah.
Coach Association. By the way, South Carolina every state has NHSCA. South Carolina also has the South Carolina Strength Coaches Association. Dr. Eric Cash runs it. So they're way ahead of the curve. But we went to North Carolina and we stopped. This coach got hired at a school like right on the border. He's in South Carolina, but it was North Carolina. It was called Mallard Creek. And it was a, quote unquote, I think like a lower income school. Trying to think of like what we would equate it to, maybe like a Neptune, kind of like that. It reminded me of. And they had a wrestler there that never lost. I think he's at UNC now as a freshman. Never lost in high school. And varsity had an away match. So I saw the JV wrestlers, and there were 2 heavyweights. I have not seen kids jacked like this in forever. And they were just JV. They didn't really know where to put the arms. They were a little bit wild. But when a kid stood up, it was like a step block lift. I mean, they were strong AF. And I was like, oh, man, you could tell like these kids are just big off of mom's home cooking. And I met the wrestling coach, and the strength coach's weight room was in a converted classroom. So it was like 8 or 9 squat racks. And then in the hallway, that's where they would run sprints. And then in a storage closet, you had a ton of sandbags, and they just kind of rotated through. Like, we're doing barbell work. There was some benches in there with those power blocks. Then you're outside in the hallway sprinting or jumping on and off boxes or carrying sandbags, just basic stuff. And then when I went into their office to use the restroom, I swear to you, I saw like, I don't know, 50 jars of peanut butter and a lot of bread. I was like, dang, you guys eat peanut butter sandwiches all day? He said, we get that from the food pantry down the street. And so if a kid didn't get changed, I tell them, if you want phys ed credit, you got to start making peanut butter sandwiches. And when every kid would finish a weightlifting class, boy or girl, they got a peanut butter sandwich. And, you're talking about like them respecting it. I was like, wow, at my school, we got an athletic trainer selling Pop-Tarts and
Yep.
muffins. And it's like,
What are we
what?
doing here?
Yeah, that's just criminal, man. Like, come on. And I tell the kids, like, I'm not even calling it junk food. I'm just calling it poison. I'm calling it junk. And so sometimes when people think it is their right to be on this team, they forget. They don't understand that sports is a privilege. Lifting weights is a privilege. You get to do it. It's not your right to do it. And I think that has kind of made sports take that turn, sideways and all over the place. And I think when you grow up with a lot, so, I don't know. It's interesting. My buddy used to coach at UPenn 20 years, 19 years. He left right before COVID. I said, who's your toughest kids? He's like, you never know. He's like, sometimes kids that come, from billionaire families are tough as nails. Sometimes a kid coming from the hood is not tough, and vice versa. He's like, you never know. And then Donnie Pritzoff told me, you never know when a kid is going to turn the corner. He's like, first 3 years, a kid could be a total like dickhead, doesn't listen to you, always opposes you, doesn't work hard, late, skips, da da. He's like, then senior year, like flips a switch and he's an All-American. He's like, so you never know when they're going to turn. And that lesson to me was, don't count anybody out. So I tell kids, if I kick you out, you could always come back. They say you got 3 chances. I'm more like, 2 million chances. It's a new day. Or if I kick you out, come back in 2 minutes later. But kids don't know how to come back 2 minutes later and say, I'm sorry, I messed up. They just come back in. And it's like, man, we're doing a lot of things wrong. I'm doing something wrong. Parents doing wrong. School's doing wrong. We need to get kids to say, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I'm not being a good listener. I'm not being a great teammate. Can I come in and have another chance? But if they think it's their right to do it, they don't need to say sorry. And that starts bleeding into life. Okay. Hey, I did wrong to you. I am sorry, and I'm going to come back better. No, they're just like, I'm back, So that's where school kind of crushes me, amongst other things. That's another podcast.
It is.
Yeah.
Well,
Crazy.
Zach, I'm jealous of your kids. It sounds like they're eating good. You kind of painted
Lot
that
of
picture for
bacon
me.
and
It's
eggs
like,
every morning. Let's
man, yeah,
go.
bacon, eggs, and hash browns. Like, man, good for them.
Weekend is pancake eggs. Weekday is eggs, toast, and if I make the potatoes, then I slice them up. And during COVID, I actually started going to a farm in PA to get the majority of our red meats, chicken too. But we've been going to Trader Joe's for chicken a lot. I like Trader Joe's, and I just started like looking at the different physique of kids versus kind of your year of graduation, Jimmy, and certainly our years, Richie, of just kids are getting fatter and fatter. And I was like, man, it's got to be the supermarket food. And I was like, I don't want my kids to have that. So I try to, and it's also like a nice break, guys, to take a 90-minute ride into Pennsylvania and hit the farms. And you're like, damn, where am I? This is beautiful out here. So it's good peace of mind. It's like an excuse to kind of escape the noise as well. But I'll go to like a Mennonite farmer. I'll order the food ahead of time, big cooler, take it home, stock up the freezer, and I gotta take a trip out to PA soon for that stock up trip.
Nice. Yeah, different world out there for sure. Zach, what are you listening to right now? Music, podcasts, audiobooks? Are you reading anything?
Yeah, I'm reading a book upstairs in my office called The White Prisoner, which is like a old, I think it might be a fictional story about like an old, it's like a weightlifter, I think maybe from the 80s. And if I'm understanding the book right, is he is in a weightlifting camp for Bulgaria or something, but he thinks he's a prisoner. That's how like hard the training is. Um, I'd prefer not to share this book, but in my, like, I like to be transparent. I hate that I have to read this book, How to Win Any Argument. I feel like I've argued with almost every coach at my school, argue with administration, and my argument, and I'm always advocating for the kids. And I just feel like, why am I reading this? Our boy Danny O referred this to me. Show you what's on my desk right here. Anything by Dan Kennedy is very important for business. This book, they sometimes say that it's not accurate. The Book of Five Rings. That's a good book. Sometimes you guys asked about a ritual. I do it probably once a week. I'll write in my journal, but kind of more trying to like manifest. I haven't dug into this book, but this is my friend, Donnie Mabe, Secret Sauce of Leadership. He's the director of Olympic sports performance at UT Austin. But I like to buy books, support friends. This book, do you guys know who Coach Yavorik is? Istvan Yavorik? So is his name? Where's his name? You can't his daughter wrote it about Coach Yavorik, but if you guys go on my YouTube, type in like Romania or Romanian weightlifter, you'll hear the story of him and the coach who made me cry. But also Coach Yavorik, Istvan, Istvan, he has old YouTube videos. He was like, I don't know if he invented it, but he certainly brought them forward because he was a weightlifter in Romania. You know how we do barbell complexes? He created all these complexes. And so those are on YouTube, barbell, dumbbells, and you'll hear about him when I talk about the weightlifter who made me cry.
All right.
Was from Romania. So Coach Yavorik, I met him in person when I was with Coach Reeve at Wake Forest. North Carolina State Strength Coach Clinic used to be amazing. I don't think they do it anymore because Coach Reeve was at Wake Forest. It was like $5 to enter. He'd have speakers like Pavel, Louis Simmons, $5 to enter, amazing. And so to learn from Coach Yavorik, like he had like a hill and like stairs made outside of his community college where he was a coach. And they did all these plyometric series for any athlete. Wait till you see it. Rich, I'm shocked you don't know Coach Yavorik. You must have
I think
heard
I've
of
heard
him.
you talk of him before.
Yep. Look up his name and you'll find old videos. Of course, the quality is poor because of the cameras we used, but wait till you see the stair and hill series. Smoke anybody, but so good for sports.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing. So I got a lot of books here. Man, I got more books to my right, but upstairs, sometimes I read business books. I saw a book, I think it's called like Six Tires. It's the guy that created like Discount Tire Store. And basically the theme behind the book is everything is based around like, even if you're losing money, take care of the customer and take great care of your employees. Like care for them. And it's made me a better coach as I'm trying to be more involved in the community in Manasquan. If I hear that somebody's family is struggling, I scholar them. Boom, I eat it. I know it. I got to pay my coaches, but I don't want to add stress to the family. So we scholar them. If I just that everything's like, oh, somebody can't afford new tires. We have used tires. Give it to them for free. Take care of them. Okay. Come in. Even if you didn't get your tires from here, you need air in your tires. We'll do it for free. Everything came back to just taking care of people, which I view that if you're a teacher or coach, you get out a sheet of paper, you draw a line down the middle. On this side says what is best for athlete or student, whatever. What is not best? I want to be on this column only. And if you want me to be in the column of what is not best, I cannot ethically go down that road. I cannot. I have to protect these kids like they're my own. That's how I coach and teach. What would I say to you if you were my daughter? What would I say to you if you were my son? What would I want for you if you were my son in this situation? That's how I make decisions. And it's just not that cut and dry in the schools anymore.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm sorry. 2 hours with you guys. I killed your night.
No, you're good.
No
That's what
way.
we don't do anything other than this. So you're all right. We love doing this.
Perfect.
Last one we got for you, Zach.
Yes.
Do you have a guilty pleasure?
Yeah,
Could be
probably
food.
coffee. I
Coffee?
didn't drink coffee for years. I actually stopped drinking coffee when I was with Rutgers. I was driving out to Ohio for the Nationals. And wait till you hear this crazy ass story. The comments on this YouTube video, they're going to think I'm so frigged up. I was like, all right, you don't get to go to Starbucks or any coffee shop. You can only get coffee from the truck stop because you haven't exercised. You're just driving. So you don't deserve a nice cup of coffee. So I go into the rest stop and there's nice. And then there was like the coffee thing in the truck stop to the back. I went there and I drank that coffee and I was like, man, I ain't feeling too right on this. I get to Ohio. I go lift with Matt Wenning. We go out to eat at a hibachi. And then I get to my hotel and I'm like freezing. I'm like, man, something ain't right. And then the next day I go and watch like that first round of the Nationals. And I remember, that was kind of me when I turned down the job. And I tell my wife, I'm like, I don't feel good at all. And I'm like, is there an urgent care you could look up for me in this area and I'll go get medicine? She's like, if you don't feel good now, tomorrow you're going to feel worse. She's like, you should start driving home right now. And it may have been like around early afternoon where I was like, all right, I think I could drive till midnight. So I drove back and it was, the next year was COVID. But my wife was like, you probably had COVID. You were like, I had a cough lingering for like months. I couldn't stop this cough. And I remember Coach Goody saying to me, he's like, you're still coughing? And it was like, 2 months after Nationals. I was like, dude, I got sick there. I don't know what happened. But I stopped drinking coffee back then. Then 2 years ago, I was teaching a health class. And this girl asked me a question about coffee. And I'm like, guys, I don't get involved in anything that is on my mind and has control over me. And these kids are all like, I got to have coffee in the morning. I have to on my way here. And as soon as I leave school, I got to go to Starbucks and I get this, I don't know what it was called, 2 shots, espresso, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, nope. Because when I drink tea, I'm never like, I want another cup of tea. It just doesn't happen. When I drink coffee, I'm thinking of my next cup of coffee. Ever since that conversation with that girl, I started drinking coffee and I'm like, son of a bitch, I'm freaking drinking coffee again. So for 2 years, I have 1, maybe 2 cups of coffee a day, but usually it's on my way. Like I'm getting a break. My preference is drink tea, two bags of tea, a little bit of raw honey and a little thing of milk. That's it. It doesn't have some strong taste. It's just good. There's no crash to it. And I want to get back to that. So right now, coffee, but I do appreciate, like, there's a nice little spot in Manasquan now called Batch. One of our wrestlers is like one of the main kids there. He's a Borough guy, Ryan Acquisto, great kid. Actually tore his labrum pitching junior year. I told his dad, I was like, I don't think you should wrestle. If baseball's your love, you probably don't want to wrestle. Kid went to physical therapy and underground. We helped with the rehab. He gets his 100th win in Atlantic City. I was like, man, I'm telling this kid you shouldn't wrestle. He's like, I'm friggin' doing it. He's our man of the year. But long story short, I appreciate going into a coffee shop and just kind of the experience. Coffee's not like, but sometimes I also like to have a cup of coffee while I write. So coffee is a little bit like it's like winning in the battle of toughness right now. And this conversation, I feel like I'm going to go tea now. That's it. Because then you guys, if you text me like 3 months from now, I don't want to sound weak and be like, yeah, guys, I went back to the coffee. I'm gonna be like, fellas, guess what? Haven't touched coffee since the podcast.
No, that'd be impressive.
I just want the Airey brothers to respect me.
Well, you already got
You
that,
already got
sir.
that.
You already
Oh,
got
dude.
that. And I will be 100% transparent. Coffee has its claws in me. I'm pretty good with other things. I can't give coffee up. I had a period last year where I went
Yeah.
like a month or 2, but
All right, maybe I
don't
won't give it up. Maybe it's cool. If it's cool with Jimmy, listen, people get, I think, too caught up in stuff. What a guilty pleasure is if you're doing something that's damaging yourself, right? Coffee, you could have good conversation with people. I'm giving money to a small business. I love to do that. And it gives me a little kickstart, and I'm okay with that. There ain't nothing wrong with that.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I'm cool with it. All right. You know what? Let's just keep going with forget the whole tea thing. Just delete that.
Well, you know why you can have 1 cup of tea and only 1 cup of tea is because it doesn't taste all that great. That's why. That's why you want a second cup of coffee because it's delicious.
The tea is like it's like, it doesn't get too high, it doesn't get too low. It's just like right in the middle. And a good cup of coffee, something like special about
Mm-hmm.
a good cup of coffee on the deck or with a good people. It just, tea. But although that guy, dang, he was part of that, like, they called him like Obi-Wan Nairobi. He was like a SAS Special Forces guy. And he's like, I was just having my tea and I heard that these terrorists invaded the hotel. So I put my tea down and had my kit in my car. And he's like, for 24 hours, I was in flow state, like killing terrorists. after my tea. So sometimes I'm drinking my tea and I'm like, damn, if I could be like that guy. Badass.
Back in the day,
Obi-Wan from.
sorry.
Is that a book?
Obi-Wan,
Is there a book about that?
Obi-Wan Nairobi. I think his name is Daniel something. And he was a SAS soldier. And I believe, I don't know if he had been retired from military, but he was in, where's Nairobi? Is that Africa? Kenya.
Yeah.
And, terrorists took over this massive hotel. And he's a one-man guy. He went into popped his trunk and he had these weapons. He had like a knife on him and he was killing terrorists. And in his interview, he's like, I was in flow state, no bathroom, no hunger, no fatigue, just like blah, 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 blah. That is like that level is, you've heard of flow state in sports, maybe you've wrestled that way where everything was unstoppable, and it's like to do it fighting terrorists is like, whoa, bro. He's like, bullets going past me, nothing could hit me. Yeah. I don't know if there was it. Yeah. I think they need to do a movie. I think he tried to write a book, but the British government, usually if you are in a special forces unit, you have to send it to, I don't know if it's the Pentagon, but in Britain, whatever that, I don't know what that would be in Britain. If you are sharing too much like tactical stuff, they black it out, or I think his book was declined. That could be a movie that like Jack Carr would have to produce.
Yeah.
But I like, I haven't read too many military. I don't read like I once did, guys. I lay down in bed, I'm wiped out. I used to read a lot. I just feel like now I'm constantly on the run. Maybe that will change when my kids are out of the house and in college. Right now, I just feel like life is zipping by. Like, Jimmy, you came to the first ever one-day certification. Richie, you were at the CrossFit endurance seminar as a coach with Brian and Doug. And, it's interesting. Like now, like people aren't friends, this, that. That seminar, as much it was running seminar, was actually a very powerful strength and conditioning seminar. People don't, people missed a lot of those things, going and doing stuff in person. One of the guys was my buddy's former Navy SEAL. He was at that. Do you remember Quattro Deuce?
Oh yeah. How can you forget Quattro Deuce?
Quattro Deuce Saturday night went to Atlantic City to gamble and came back without sleeping. I was like, today I'll beat him because he didn't sleep and he didn't eat. And he like destroyed the workouts, the pull-up ladders, the running.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, damn it. Today was the day to beat a Navy SEAL and we just couldn't beat him. And I was like, years later, you're like, that's why he's a Navy SEAL. Yeah. You could not beat him. You're like, he'll be tired. He'll be fatigued. Maybe he won't care because he gambled and was so tired. Maybe he won't care. As soon as it became competition, he flipped the switch and became someone else. And that's pretty cool to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't he do like some epic row too?
Oh, yeah. Him and Brian Chontosh, and one or two others. They were out in sea for like 30 days. I mean, it looks more like it almost looks like they're in some sort of like above water submarine, pretty big.
Yeah.
But to be out there and battle the weather, I mean, Mother Nature is the most gnarly. Every time I come across like a video of like ships, those guys know that they could have died out there. And it's just crazy that they step up to it. And by the way, they do train. But I remember Quattro Deuce, I was at a seminar at his gym. And one of his friends is like, yeah, we're going to do that bike ride for the police or military. And it's like 250 miles. And he's like, yeah, Zach, you want to do that with us? I was like, hell's no, dude. I haven't been on a bike in a long time. I haven't trained for that. So what if somebody kidnapped your daughter? You do it? I go, yeah, I would do it. He goes, then you're ready. I was like, oh. You just got to change your mind. And so that is like that kind of mindset of like, he's like, you don't need to prepare. You just need it in your mind that you can't be defeated. And by the way, hey buddy, by the way, two, it could be more, but two Blair wrestlers are in DevGru. I'm not going to mention names here, but it's like there was a lot of wrestlers actually in the we all know that the wrestlers and like water polo tend to be like a lot of the SEAL team guys, but it's pretty cool that it's some Blair Academy guys.
That's awesome.
Just go from one elite to the next.
Yeah.
Love it.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Zach, this was amazing, sir.
Yeah,
Awesome
baby.
catching up.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for your time. Thank you for all the knowledge.
Thank you guys. Great times.
Yeah, Zach, it was great catching up with you, and I'm sure Jimmy and I will be home for the holidays, so we'll
Hells yeah.
let's go grab a cup of coffee.
We're gonna do.
Turnstile.
Yes.
Pour overs on
Oh
me.
yeah. That place is great
Turnstile.
in Belmar, right?
Yeah, that's my
Yeah.
favorite. Rich has different opinion, but that's my favorite coffee in the country.
I'm not like coffee knowledge. I'll drink what you tell me to drink.
All right, I got you.
All right,
Ethiopian.
boys.
Take care, Zach.
Thank you guys.